Hey YouTube, in this video I'm gonna be talking about an open meet I just did. So I ran 100 and 200 at this meet, and this meet was very important to me because it's the first meet where I've ever ran and I was like, okay, so what I just ran feels like it's very even, the 100 and 200. The 200 I could have done it faster, but I would say the reason why I didn't do it faster was because I just did 100 less than an hour before, so my body was fatigued still. So it's understandable for me to not be getting the times I wanted to be getting based off the 100-meter time I got. So now, what did I run? The big question. I ran an 11:18 with +2 wind on the dot, so it's just legal. And I ran for 200 a 22:94 with 0.9 wind, I think it was. So for the 100, I removed 0.5 seconds off of my 100-meter PB. Someone asked me, was like, is that a PB? And I was like, yeah. And it was like, by how much? And I was by 0.5, and she was like, 0.5? And I was like, 0.5, yeah. And then we just had a back and forth because it was so shocking. Because my 11:68 from before was about a month before this time. So the fact that I was able to cut off 0.5 in a month is shocking. And what I think is really impressive here is the fact that I know for a fact I haven't peaked yet. I'm nowhere near my peak, which is why the numbers improved by so much. Because the majority of the improvements came not from strength improvements, but more from form improvements. So I know that, yeah, I'm just getting better and better. Because the race I ran the 11:68 was very, very far from a perfect race. Because when I ran that 11:68, the problems I had was my start was garbage. It was good enough to win, but it wasn't good enough to dominate. And what I really liked about these two races was there was someone in the race that I could have used to determine my level of effort. Generally, he's the person who came second to me in the race around 11:68. And generally, when we're doing block starts, because he's also trains with me, he's usually leading. But this is the only time we ever raced where he wasn't, or like regardless of whether it was in a meet or in training session, where I led from the gun and he was behind. And it was so bad to the point where I actually only found out he was in my race after I did my 200 meters. Because I asked him and he's like, oh yeah, because in my race, the person right next to me was my competition. He was the only person I saw. And when we got near the very, very end, when I eventually passed the person on my left, I started to look elsewhere because I didn't really see anyone else. But near the end, everyone started to really start to catch up. So I was actually looking back in the video, they didn't actually start to catch up, but I felt like I could see more people now. So I looked and I was like, oh, maybe I'm not going to get first. I wasn't sure. But for the 100 breakdown, from the 11:68, the block start was poor. I really, really hammered my block starts, and I was able to get a really, really good start, which was shown by the fact that I was able to beat the other person by the 60-meter mark. I was in second place by the 60-meter mark, which has never happened before in a race. And what makes this even more crazy was that this race was my fastest race I've ever competed in this entire season. I might have been in a race where someone ran a 10-second time in one of my previous season, not the last one, the one before, so I didn't compete last season. But it's still impressive that with such a fast race, I was second, and I didn't really have to do much work to become first, because usually you have to push really hard. Because you usually see that people say, if someone with high top end speed has a good block start, what would happen? And I finally got to experience it, because usually we have poor block starts, but I'm like, maybe that might just be countering so we can actually have good top end speed, because of the poor block start, our start has to be more energy efficient, even though it might not actually be more energy efficient. But I basically debunked that you can have good top end speed and have a good block start. You can have both of them. So for this 100, I ran 11:18, 0.5 seconds faster. The block start was really good. I came out of the blocks powerfully and I drove. My head, I haven't actually fully analyzed the video, but my head position has been a bit off. I have been looking down when I should have been up. I feel like I actually was in line with my body. I wasn't breaking at the neck. Essentially, I'm pretty sure my body rose gradually. And the next thing was, as I came out the blocks, the first 3 steps were really, really good. Form wise, there was obviously improvements that could be made, but for how I pushed, what I pushed with, and where I landed, it was good enough, much better than what it was a month ago. The only problem was on the 4th step, I'm fairly certain I landed on my quad. And when that happened, I just pulled back a slight bit. So I was like, that's a bit of a problem. But I fixed this for the steps after that. I'm not sure if it was this very next step or the few other steps, but after a while I fixed that and I was able to continue to drive. But other than that, there wasn't really any problems that I had with the race. Other than for the last 2 steps, I thought I wasn't going to win the race. So I leaned. The problem isn't the fact that I leaned, it's how I leaned. Because usually my leans are very, very efficient. Which is why I actually think for this race I could have run 11:15. But for this race, it was the first time I've ever leaned and I leaned too early. It wasn't too crazy early, but it was in 1 step earlier than the actual line. Because the way I normally lean is I make sure that my foot lands on the ground and then I lean. Because there's no point in extending your leg because you're just going to slow down. You won't actually move any faster. So I messed up there. I could have gone 11:15, but proving by 0.5 seconds is still a massive improvement, which I'm going to take. And I know now what I did wrong for this race, what I can work on. And this race, just like how it was with the 11:68, it doesn't really feel like I can improve by too much. But I'm sure a month from now, I'm going to do something crazy. Maybe not crazy enough to remove 0.5 seconds again, because that would be crazy. But I'm going to do something where it's like, okay, there is still room for improvement. And I'll just go prove it and I'll improve. But until then, this is quite close to about my peak with how I've been training though. I'm of the belief that the more plyometrics I do, and as long as I just stick with this season, I'm going to improve. My coach believes I can get 11 flat, and he thinks that's something that I can do as a minimum, essentially. As long as I continue to train the way I've been training, 11 flat is basically a guarantee. But we are looking at trying to get 10.9 generally by the time the season ends, which obviously I'm trying to get 10.5. If you don't know, then just hold that thought. By the end of the month, you will find out why I want to get 10.5. But I think a 10.9 would be happy. I'd be very happy with that. The only question is when will it happen, and when will this 11 flat happen? Because I know I can do it. I just need to prove it. But that's besides the point. Let's just show the race.
Come on! Let's go! Come on! Come on! Yay!
Now for the 200, bit of a different race. Like with all my 200s, by the time usually I do 100 before, and so when I get to 200, it's like I just want to go home. So, and that's exactly how it was for this race too. So I just went in. I was like, okay, the 100 was really good. I just need to continue with the 100 and push that one to the 2. I ran at Bucks before at Nationals. I know what I should not do. This time I did still experiment, but how I did it was different. I was like, okay, I spoke to my coach. I know what the problem was, the main problem. I went out completely all out from the start. I know what I need to not do, which is not go out all out completely hard, but I need to go out hard for a certain period of time, for about 70 to 80 meters. And as the bend comes around, I float. Because before I normally pushed for about 50 meters. The second I was upright, I'd push for a bit more and then I just float. So I was like, by this point, and by the time we get to the 100-meter mark, I was matching 12-second sprinters. I should have been well ahead, but I was matching 12-second sprinters. So I know there was a problem with my first 100, but I feel like I've fixed that now. It's more in line with my abilities, so I can actually get faster times. Once my body adapts with how to sprint like this, I'll improve. I spoke to my coach, and he said that the race was good, so was the 100, but I need to make sure that I'm lifting my knees properly, because when I'm making the figure four position, the lead leg, so once one leg's on the floor, touching the floor straight down, the leg that's around trying to go forwards, we'll call that the lead leg, is making a figure four, but the figure four is like this when it should be like this. Like this is the lead leg. The figure four is like this when it should be more closer to this. If possible, we want to get the calf to touch the hamstring, which I'm not even close to doing. One leg is all right at it, and the other leg is just like letting my foot drag, essentially. It's not crazy obvious, but it is a problem. If I can fix that, then I'll improve by a lot. But generally, that's just mobility, which I can't really fix by the end of the season. Not really, I don't think. So this is more just something that I'm gonna have to be working on for next season. The footage for the 200 wasn't the best, so I can't really show too much. Like the bend was like the really important part. I'm still trying to get better footage for the 200. If I get better footage for the 200, I'll put it on my Instagram. If I don't get better footage, I'm just gonna have to use what I have. But I ran 22.94 with, I believe it was 0.9 wind, which is quite good. With my 11.18, I converted, and the time I should have run, let me do it again. The time, based off my times so far in the season, obviously this isn't always accurate, but the time I should have ran should have been 22.52. Obviously, I just ran 100 an hour before, so it makes sense that I don't get close to that. But a 22.54 should have been what I pulled off. I got a 22.94. Well, no, a 22.52. I got a 22.94, which isn't unfortunate because it's a PB, but I'm still a bit annoyed because I could have done better. But I'll take what the heavens are giving me. I'm still very grateful because that's a PB by, I don't really want to do the maths off the top of my head, but it's a PB by a very, very big amount. Maybe not as much as my 100-meter was, which is why I'm partially kind of upset. It's PB by 0.34 seconds. But I'll still take it because it's still the start of the season and I literally did run 100 before. Once the time has been converted into a more reasonable wind, I should have run 22.72, which is quite close to what I ran anyway. So maybe I could have done 0.1 faster today, but the fact that we're still close was really good. And as bad as the footage is, here's the footage for the 200.
Let's go, Joe! Come on, Joe! Go on, Paul! Come on, Kevin! Come on, Kevin! Come on, Paul! Come on, Kevin! Come on! Come on, come on!
After this race, I've basically done all the experiments that I can think to do. There isn't any more that I actually want to do. I've basically done them all. My form was also a big experiment because my form's changed 3 times this one season. The first change was the biggest one at the start of the season where I literally had no time to really use the changed form. Then I made 2 changes in the last month or so, which is why I was able to PB by so much. And I've confirmed that this new change that has happened to my form is the one that should stick and I should continue to do because it is what got me the 11.18. So now there's only 2 things that I want to focus on for the rest of the season, which is form, that's one thing, and mobility. Those are just the 2 things I'm going to be doing, form and mobility. And then I'm just going to maintain everything else I've been doing. I'll be doing a bare minimum amount of work in the gym and I'll keep up my plyometrics. Most of the work though is going to be bilateral because the unilateral work is quite intense and it does really not weaken the cars, but it does hamper your ability to recover for sessions later on, especially if you do these types of plyometrics as a warm-up. A cool down, that's a different story, but a warm-up, yeah. And the track here wasn't even the best possible track because you can literally see the bottom, so it's like running on rocks. So the fact that I even ran 11.18 and 22.94, I'm happy with, because if that's the, I mean, I know it is the case. There's no bounce at all. If that's the case, there's a good chance I can still PB if I was just to run the way I just ran those 2 races elsewhere, and the win's legal. As long as I can get that done, I can PB. Maybe the 100 is a bit hit or miss, but it might actually happen regardless, because if I could have run 11.15, then I still left a bit in the tank. So as long as I continue to train, next month we could be seeing something crazy again. Who knows? I'm just gonna hope for the best, continue to put in the work, and continue to try and chip down so I can get to that 10.5. If you like my video, like the video, let me know in the comment section below. Check the description, because anything I forget to say in the video, I always put in the description. And if you like my content, subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. I post every 2 days at 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If you don't know when that is, just hit the bell and then you'll be notified instantly.